Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join me today. I hope that there is something of historical interest to you as I found in the retelling of the Battle of Athens. I'd like to say, please like, subscribe, share this video. So back to the story. A polling place for the 12th precinct had been set up in the back of Dixie Cafe across from the jail. It was commanded by Minas Wilbur for the Democrats. The GI poll watchers throughout the day had observed Wilbur letting minors vote and handing cash to adult voters. At 3:45 p.m., Wilbur attempted to allow a young woman to vote despite the fact that she had no poll tax receipt and that her name did not appear on the registry list. Harold's patience gave out. As Wilbur reached to deposit the ballot, Harold grabbed his wrist. Wilbur slapped him across the head with a blackjack and kicked him in the face as he fell to the floor. Wilbur then closed the precinct, ordered Hornsby Alley blocked at both ends, which was the other side of Dixie Cafe, and with that, a procession of guards crossed the lawn to the jail with the ballot box and the GI as captives. The Democratic forces had calculated that if they control the 1st, 11th, and 12th precincts in Athens and the one in Etowah, the election was theirs. The ballot boxes from the waterworks, the 11th precinct, and Dixie's Cafe, the 12th, were safely in the jailhouse. The voting place for the 1st precinct at the courthouse was barricaded by deputies who held 4 GIs hostage, and Paul Cantrell himself was at Etowah under control. By 6 p.m., it seemed to be over. The GI headquarters was deserted, and an unhappy crowd moved quietly along the streets. Another election had been stolen, and nothing had been done about it. At the Strand Movie Theater, across from the courthouse, the marquee read, "Coming soon, gunning for vengeance." Bill White, who had fought in the Pacific while still in his teens and come home an ex-sergeant, had gotten angrier as the day wore on. At 2 p.m, he had hargled a group of veterans at the auto shop, saying, "You call yourselves GIs? You go over there and fight for 3-4 years, you come back, and you let a bunch of draft dodgers who stay here where it is safe, and you're making it safe for them, pushing you around. If you people don't stop this, and now is the time and the place, you people won't make a pimple on a fighting GI's ass. Get guns." In the early evening, White went to get the guns himself. He sent 2 GIs to get a truck and a few other veterans, perhaps a dozen, and he headed for the National Guard Armory. White said in a 1969 interview, he said, "Broke down the armory doors, took all the rifles, 2 Thompson submachine guns, and all the ammunition we could carry, loaded it into the 2-ton truck, and went back to the GI headquarters and passed out 70 high-powered rifles and 2 bandoliers of ammunition for each one." By 9 p.m., Paul Cantrell, Pat Mansfield, the state representative George Woods, who had also been a member of the Election Commission, and about 50 deputies were locked inside the jailhouse and were going through the ballot box. The presence of Mansfield and Woods meant that the majority of the Election Commission was on hand, so the tallies could be certified and validated on the spot. More deputies were still barricaded at the courthouse, but along the road, none were to be seen. If Cantrell forces had been a bit more wary, they might have spotted some shadows slipping up the embankment directly across the street from the jail. Opinions differ on exactly how the challenge was issued. White says he was the one to call out, "Would you damn bastards bring those damn ballot boxes out here, or are we going to have to set siege against the jail and blow it down?" Moments later, the night exploded in automatic weapons fire, punctured by shotgun blasts. "I fired the first shot," White claimed. Then everybody started shooting from our side. A deputy ran for the jail. I shot him, and he wheeled and fell inside the jail. Bullets ricocheted up and down White Street. I shot a second man. His leg flew out from under him, and he crawled under a car. The veterans bombarded the jail for hours, but Cantrell and his accomplices, secure behind the red brick walls, refused to surrender. As the uncertain battle dragged on past midnight, the GIs began to have some uneasy second thoughts. They knew that they had violated local, state, and federal laws that night. If Cantrell was not routed before the rescuers arrived, they might spend the rest of their lives in prison. Rumor compounded their fears. The National Guard is on the way. The state troopers are here. Birch Biggs and his gang are coming. Biggs ran Polk County more ruthlessly than Cantrell ran McMillan. If the veterans had known the truth, they would have been less apprehensive. George Woods had telephoned Biggs earlier that night for help. Biggs was not there, but his son, Broughton, took the call, and his answer was, "Do you think I'm crazy?" Woods slipped out of town shortly thereafter. The veterans were eager to end the battle. Some of them made Molotov cocktails, others went to the county supply house for dynamite. The gasoline bombs proved ineffective, but at 2:30 a.m. the dynamite arrived. At about that time, an ambulance pulled around to the north end of the jail, and the GIs assumed that it was for evacuating the wounded. The veterans let it pass. 2 men jumped in, but then, instead of returning to the hospital, the ambulance sped away north out of town. The men who jumped in, Paul Cantrell and Pat Mansfield. At 2:48 a.m., the first dynamite was tossed toward the jail. It landed under Bob Dunn's cruiser, and the explosion flipped the vehicle over on its top. Wow, that's something I would have liked to have seen. Leaving the wheels spinning. 3 more bundles of dynamite were thrown almost simultaneously. One landed on the jail porch roof, another under Mansfield's car, and the third struck the jail wall. The explosions rattled windows throughout the town. Leaves fell from trees, debris scattered for blocks, and the jailhouse porch jumped off its foundation. The deputies barricaded in the courthouse a block away rushed to the balcony, eager to surrender. The jail's defenders staggered out from the ruined stronghold and handed the ballot boxes over to the veterans. With Cantrell's forces conquered, 10 years of suppressed rage exploded. The townspeople set upon the captured deputies, but for the GIs, and probably would have killed them. Minas Wilbur, a particularly unpopular deputy, had his throat slashed. Biscuit Ferris, Cantrell's prison superintendent, had his jaw shattered by a bullet. And Windy Wise was kicked and beaten senseless. Joined by a number of other fellows, the GIs cleared out the jail of the rioters and locked up the prisoners for the night. At dawn, the veterans slipped from the jail, made their way through the remains of the battle, and dispensed into what they hoped would be anonymity. Miraculously, there had been no deaths. But on August 2nd, a page 1 headline in the New York Times wrongly trumpeted the news. Tennessee sheriff is slain in preliminary day violence. All day long, reporters and cameras and notebooks poured into the town for photographs, questions, analysis, and to write. With every newcomer, they passed the sign as they entered the town, "Welcome to Athens, the friendly city." The victory of the veterans that night on August 1946 appeared at first to have settled nothing. The national press was almost unanimous in condemning the action of the GIs. In an editorial perhaps best reflecting the ambivalence of a startled nation, the New York Times concluded, "Corruption, when and where it exists, demands reform, and even in the most corrupt and boss-ridden communities, there are peaceful means by which reform can be achieved, but there is no substitute in a democracy for orderly process." The syndicated columnist Robert C. Ruark commented, "There is little difference, essentially, between a vigilante and a member of a lynch mob, and, if we are seeking an answer to crooked politics, the one that the Athens boys just prepondered sure isn't it." Another paper cautiously compared the battle to the American Revolution, then went on to say that nothing could be more dangerous both to our liberties and our welfare than the making of a McMillan County revolution into a habit. In the early days of August 1946, a power vacuum existed in McMillan County that easily could have spawned anarchy. Armed GIs patrolled streets that were still tense with the rumors of Mansfield's army poised to reclaim Athens. Hundreds of men were issued permits to carry weapons, and machine guns on rooftops guarded the approach into town. Several times, groups of veterans rushed to barricade the roads, and occasionally they terrorized innocent travelers in an attempt to thwart an invasion that never came. On August 4th, Pat Mansfield telegraphed his resignation as sheriff of McMillan County to Governor McCord and requested that Knox Henry fill his unexpired term, which would end September 1st. Henry was appointed immediately, and the next day, State Rep George Woods returned to the county under GI protection to convene the election commission and certify the election. A cheer rang out in the courthouse when Woods rose as the canvass ended and announced that Knox Henry was elected sheriff by a vote of 2,175 to 1,270. Elsewhere in Tennessee, E.H. Crum and his machine were finally on the way out. With the election of Governor Gordon Brown and the young United States Senator Ellis Kefauver. I apologize if I missaid that. Full year afterwards, the national press seized upon the most insignificant news from Athens as evidence of the veterans' lawlessness. There was indeed remarkably little crime prosecutions in the wake of the violent night. Only one man had charges brought against him, Windy Wise, the deputy who'd shot the old black farmer in the back, Tom Gillespie. He drew a sentence of 1 to 3 years. As for a large result of the Athens rebellion, the GIs universally hailed the return of the independent vote to the community and the election of fine people to lead it. The national press continued to show interest in what had happened. Finally, on the first anniversary of the violent election, the Times reported, "Today it appears that this political coalition of World War II veterans for direct action in community affairs, which many at the time regarded as a factor likely to develop nationally in the post-war period, was purely a local phenomenon in which veteran participation was incidental." With this epitaph, the press turned away from Athens. Knox Henry served 2 terms as sheriff in McMillan County and was succeeded by Otto Kennedy. Paul Cantrell, after seeking temporary asylum in Chattanooga, returned to Etowah and continued to operate the bank there with his brothers. Pat Mansfield returned secretly to Athens on August 8th of 1946 to resign his membership on the election committee. He met with Otto Kennedy for 2 hours, apparently with no ill feelings on either side, and then announced, "I'm through with politics for good. It sure messes you up sometime. I'm going back to railroading." What a Democrat. And with that, I want to say thank you very much for taking the time out of your very busy schedules to join me. I hope that this little bit of history has brought at least a nice laugh to you. Please like, subscribe, and share, and leave a comment down below. United we stand, divided we fall. God bless you, and God bless America.